In this lecture, we'll learn the basics of how audio works in our Unity games. So let's get to it. We're going to have a pretty simple game here where I will play a sound effect when the mouse enters the teddy bear. So my teddy bear game object has a box collider 2D attached to it so that we can detect when the mouse enters the collider for the teddy bear. And I also have a teddy bear script attached to the teddy bear, and that's the script that will actually play the sound when the mouse enters the collider. Before we look at the details, there are some big ideas behind the way audio works in Unity. The first big idea is we need an audio listener component attached to one of our game objects in the scene. And this is the component that actually hears the sound effects that are played by our game and then forwards them along to our headphones or speaker or whatever. So we need to make sure that one of our game objects has an audio listener attached. If I select our main camera in our scene, we can see that by default the main camera has an audio listener component attached. So we know we get an audio listener attached by default to our main camera. We also need to have at least one audio source. So in this lecture, we'll attach an audio source to the teddy bear, and this audio source will play an audio clip, and then the audio listener will hear that audio clip and we'll hear it through our speakers or headphones or whatever. Now it turns out that we can have more than one audio source. We can have lots of objects with audio sources attached to them, and they can play their own sound effects whenever it's appropriate for them to do so. In our 2D games, it doesn't really matter where the audio listener is located or where the audio sources are located. In a 3D game, you can make a much more interesting audio soundscape where it matters where the sources and listener are, so you can sort of tell that something's behind you and those kinds of things. But we're not going to worry about it with this simple teddy bear game or any of the 2D games that we build in our courses. So we need to add an audio source to our teddy bear. I'll select the teddy bear object, and over in the inspector, I'll add a component, an audio component, and it will be an audio source. And I'll move this component up so my script is at the bottom. Now the way audio sources work is they play an audio clip. And as you can see with my first field here, I don't actually have an audio clip associated with this audio source yet. Over in the project window, I have an audio folder that I created, and I added a WAV file called AU to this audio folder. Unity supports a number of different sound file formats, but I tend to just use WAV files. So as usual, the way I populate the field is I just drag this OW audio clip over onto the audio clip for the audio source. And now the audio source has a clip that it can play when we tell it to play that clip. Now I haven't done anything in the script yet to actually play a sound effect, but listen to what happens when I start my game. As you heard, we actually got the OW sound played. And that's because my audio source component has the play on awake checkbox checked. And we don't want to play the sound effect when the scene loads. We only want to play the sound effect when the mouse enters the collider for the teddy bear. So I'll uncheck that box and I'll play the game again. And as you can see, it no longer plays that sound effect when the scene loads. Let's go add the code to the script to actually play the audio clip when the mouse enters the collider for the teddy bear. I know we're going to need a reference to the audio source component that's attached to the teddy bear because we're going to have the audio source play its clip each time the mouse enters the collider. And rather than getting that component every time we need to play that clip, we'll just get the component once and store it in a field. So I'll have an audio source field that I'll just call audio source. And then in the start method, I'll do our standard get component audio source, and now we'll get the audio source component that's attached to the teddy bear game object, and we'll store it in the audio source field. I've already included an onMouseEnter method that will get called on the first frame in which the mouse enters the collider for the teddy bear. But right now, we're not playing any sound when the mouse enters the collider, so at this point, we should go look at the audio source documentation to see how we can play the clip associated with the audio source. I just happen to have that documentation open, and if we scroll down and we look at the methods for the audio source, we can see, oh look, I just landed on it by mistake. We can see that there's a play method that we can call that plays the clip. And the clip is the audio clip that we populated in the inspector. As you can see in the documentation, there are lots of methods that we can call on the audio source to do lots of interesting things, but we're just doing some simple audio basics at this point, so all we need is the play method. So here in the onMouseEnter method, we'll just say the audio source should play the clip that's associated with the audio source. And everything builds fine. So back here in our game, each time the mouse enters the collider, we'll play that audio clip. And I won't talk as I do this so you can actually hear that audio.
Ow! Ow! Ow!
And there you go. Those are the basic ideas behind playing sound effects in your Unity games. To recap, in this lecture we learned that we need an audio listener to hear the sounds we play in our game. We learned that the main camera comes with an audio listener component attached to it by default. We learned how to import audio clips into our game. We learned how to add an audio source to a game object that we want to play sounds in our game. And we learned how, from within a script, we can have an audio source play its audio clip.